All right. Hey, everyone. This is Diamond Rivera of the Live Discussions with Diamond podcast. And we have a very special episode for you tonight. But before we get started, letting you know that we are on YouTube, Spotify, and other streaming platforms, as well as Facebook. And tonight, people, we're taking our talents all the way to the Houston area as we touched on styles of bachata, styles of salsa, styles of zouk. I think it's so much more important as well to highlight the kizomba influence. And what none better of a place than Houston, a place that is growing and has been growing for so many years. And having a person like our next guest coming up who really is pushing the envelope and helping spread awareness on what Kizomba has to offer. So, everyone, we have here all the way from the Houston area, Savannah Kizaksha. Tera.
Hi, how are you?
Hello. Wait, so first things first, did I get it right?
Yes, that was like
Okay.
99%. So it's Kizachatera.
All right. But first of all, Savi, as they also call you SaviKiz,
SaviKiz is a little easier.
again, having you on tonight is really amazing. We known each other for many years, but my travels to the Dallas area, the Dallas Bachata Fest, even filming you at times, it's really amazing now having that connection, having that networking aspect, and me having this platform, allowing artists like yourselves to come on to a safe space, but being able for you to tell your story, and I think it's really important that we do that.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity. I have been a huge fan of your videography for a while, and I know you're a man of many talents. So it's great to start this dialect. Yeah.
Absolutely. And also, as we've talked as well, the reasoning behind I do what I do is because there's so many artists like yourselves that we see you maybe in a 2 or 3 minute clip, maybe of a demo or even a social dance at times. And a lot of people don't really get the full understanding of maybe who you are. They may see a photo and have a pre assumption of who you may be, but here, having you have the opportunity to kind of tell your story from your mouth, from your truth, this is why we do it. But as it is, it's important to highlight the success currently that you have. For me, the most important is helping people understand how it got to that point and even beyond, even before that. So, kind of give us an understanding on who Savannah is before Savi Kids, before Kizomba, Bachata, the Congresses, before it all.
So I actually didn't grow up dancing. I was a singer, and when I was in high school, I was doing musical theater, and I was very interested in my academia and sports and like other things. And so dancing was kind of like discovered a little bit later on in life, actually, when I was in college. So before that, I got 3 degrees that I don't really use all that much in psychology and journalism, and then in musical theater. And so I had a situation where I had a surgery that didn't go very well, and I lost some of my vocal capabilities. And so it kind of turned me over to finding another outlet that I could kind of be creative and be good at and meet people. And so I was in a botany class and met a girl from Mexico City, and she actually took me to my first like salsa club. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And it kind of like grew from there. And that was at the end of 2013. So
Wow. I mean, 2013 for so many people can't remember what they were doing in 2013. It feels so long away as we're heading into 2022. But I also think it's important talking to people like yourself, understanding that, for many people that I know in the scene, a lot of them started around 2015, 2016. I feel like that's been a resounding time, but going even far back before then, like you said, in the Houston area and getting your glimpse of that, what was that like, taking your first class, your initial classes, and kind of getting into that life?
well, I was in the middle of college, and then I ended up taking a break after I got my first associates, kind of figuring out which industry that I wanted to go into. So I did internships in real estate and marketing and oil and gas and things like that. And so it gave me my evenings free. And so after I went dancing and I had someone come up to me and ask me, "Hey, do you dance on one or two?" And I had no idea what they were talking about. I just, I was just like, I had the philosophy of dance with anybody, everywhere, just try to absorb as much knowledge as
Hmm.
possible and like fake it till you make it. And I end up going online, finding who's now my competitor instructor, his website and the classes that he offered. And he did a 4-hour workshop on Kizomba. And I'd never heard of Kizomba. Back then, that's when Sarah Lopez and
Mm.
Alvin were really kind of starting to internationalize and sensationalize what Kizomba or Kizomba fusion was. And so it really, I really gravitated to the connection part of the dance as opposed to maybe the showiness or the flashiness or, other aspects of some of the other
Hmm.
dances. And so I ended up taking that workshop and I kind of fell in love. And I had such a hard time with Saidas that I started looking up other studios too. And so my first 2 years, I was kind of a broke college student. So I didn't have money to like invest in a bunch of
Hmm.
privates. Um, and I never had like a direct mentor, like, hey, I see you're talented and
Yeah.
you're enthusiastic. Like, let me put you under my wing. It was more of like hot potato, like me hopping socials and different studios and kind of trying to absorb
Hmm.
the positive aspects of each. And I still encourage my students to do that to this day, because every instructor, every studio has a vibe or a piece of knowledge or something that's useful that you can take
Yeah.
from. Yeah.
No, but that's also interesting that what you said about kind of your story and your journey, because I've met many people, many artists and creatives that have that, what you would say, cliche storyline of, I had someone take me under their wing, I had somebody that kind of guided me in that position. But you saying taking that different route, which I've also heard of people kind of saying, I don't want to be exclusive. I want to be more having the ability to just roam, kind of nomad style, and let me just soak in from different teachers. And don't get me wrong, I think that's great, and I think that's a really interesting fact coming from your side, because me and my travels to Houston for over 10 plus years, I've always known, or kind of that lifestyle of you're in a specific studio and then you get a time to branch out, but you kind of taking it in your own hands and saying, no, I'm going to learn from everyone I can. And like you said, people like Sarah Lopez, uh, and who was an amazing Kizomba dancer. Question to you is, what was that first social dance like? Honestly, that first Kizomba dance.
So, for clarification purposes, Houston is definitely a salsa on one city. It's a very heavy
Mhm.
city. And then
Yes.
secondary, I would say, is bachata. And then we have very small communities of tango, zouk,
Mhm.
West Coast swing, things like that. And so I could only get to a certain level with certain studios when it came to like Kizomba. So very quickly, that's how
Mm.
that started. But then I also simultaneously started learning salsa from Solomon Amaya, and then
Yeah.
back then we had Zalrika and all that. So the first time I ever went social dancing in a social type setting, not a club,
Yeah.
there used to be a place called Club Melody here in Houston, and that's when all of the big studios kind of were one. So we had Culture Beat, like I said, Salrika
Mhm.
Amaya, and they had a once a month social. And I remember showing up, and there was like 1,000 people, and there was
Wow.
like no AC, and it was just salsa everywhere.
Yeah.
And I was so excited and so out of like, I had no idea what was going on, honestly.
Yeah.
The variety, the influences. I just knew that I had like the dance bug. Once you get the dance bug, you kind of fall in love and you have that commitment and that excitement, that drive
Mhm.
to like keep putting yourself in environments where you may have the opportunity to dance. Even though I didn't really know what I was doing at all. So the first time ever was just like me going to a congress. Honestly, the first time I ever went social dancing was like to a congress,
Wow.
and I just remember thinking the music was different. The music was different. It
Mhm.
wasn't everything mainstream radio
Yes.
played Latin stations. I remember there were songs that were 7, 8 minutes long in salsa. And I'm like, and it was just drenched. Everyone
Yeah.
was doing so much cardio. And that was a great side benefit to dancing to me in the very beginning, is like, I used to be 274 pounds. And
Wow.
then I fell in love with dancing and I lost over 100 pounds, and I didn't have surgery, didn't have anything. So, and I have students that have done the same thing. So the cardio aspect of dancing, of social dancing
Yeah.
specifically, kind of also was encouraging me to go. But yeah, everybody was just drenched in sweat and very, for the most part, very friendly. But you kind of have like a bullseye on you when you're a baby dancer, which is what I
Oh,
call
yes.
when you're a baby dancer and you don't have a lot of technique or foundation and you're just flailing around, you think you're doing great. You think as long as you're not smacking on the floor with your face, not tripping anyone, stepping on someone with your heels, that you're doing great. And so, yeah, I had a good first experience to kind of like nip me, and then I was just kind of like floating around trying to find that experience again. And then, you know, it got to a point in Houston where I was like, I've danced with everybody here, what's next? And that's kind of
Mm.
encouraged traveling and learning outside of Houston, outside of the US, etc.
It's true because just like Houston, LA, Florida, New York, many dancing cities, most dancers, even though you can have quote unquote the meccas of dance, those people do soon branch out because you realize you've kind of networked enough within your community that it's time to learn some a new city, learn how things work there. Like you said, going to congresses, festivals, weekenders, especially for these past few years, have been just like escapes and vacations for people, but it's also ways to build friendships, relationships, partnerships. You might have it, but I'm really happy to hear that your first experience was a good one because also on this platform, I've had many artists tell me of stories they have been a part of or things they've seen of people's first time experience, especially females, not being the best because,
Well, I would say that it started on a high and then things evolved, and I got all kinds of bad experiences, which kind of made me hungry
yeah.
to eventually become an organizer and tackle things from a more professional standpoint.
Hmm.
Beginning, it was all social heavy, like these are my friends, this is
Yeah.
for my health, this is me connecting with my culture, this is you know, fun for me, this is stress relief. And then I had these encounters with people that, you know, were disrespectful, that were
Yeah.
unhygienic, that were snobby, that didn't want to share knowledge, they wanted
Yeah.
to kind of keep it to themselves. So I did start running into those cliques. I did start running into, I guess, not feeling accepted or wanted or the threatened, I guess, because I got to a point that I was like, I want to create events and atmospheres
Yeah.
that are going to cater to, you know, not just what we have. I want to bring
Mm.
a variety of music. I want to create safe spaces because I was getting touched inappropriately, especially in my younger years with
Mhm.
professional dancers, and thinking like, well, I'm never going to have the opportunity to dance with this person at this level. This is how I grow. And so I put my own comfort and boundaries to the side.
Mm.
Um, to try to kind of like earn respect in my community. And that was definitely like an uphill battle
Yeah.
because there's very few female organizers in
Yeah.
Texas. And in Houston, there's like one or maybe two now. And they're mainly like in the Zouk community, which, you know, I wouldn't say I was anti Zouk, but I was never Zouk focused. And
Yeah.
recently, just because of how inviting and transparent that community is,
Yeah.
it's kind of encouraged me really to kind of like, you know, and I do run Houston BKZ. So I play Zouk music, but I've never really sat there and like, okay, I'm going to study,
Yeah.
be invested in Zouk the way that I have always been with salsa, bachata, and kizomba. So, Yeah, so I had enough good experiences
Hmm.
for me to get hooked. And I always tell people that, like, once you become a dance addict, you can have a kid, you can
Yeah,
travel, you can, but you always tend in some way to kind of gravitate to come back to dancing. There's just this innate loyalty,
yeah.
sense of purpose and connection that I have to dancing that I've never really experienced in my life. And when you have that kind of deep relationship with something, there's definitely the pros and the cons. There's the good and the bad that comes with it.
Absolutely. I think with everything, when, as they say, with love comes pain sometimes, and growing pains. And for me, myself, being from a performer to a videographer, working heavily now with organizers, I really do see it all. I see the good, the bad, and the ugly, and understanding how to maneuver through that. But also for me, really being a strong ally on deterring the sexual harassment and issues that happen within communities. And with conversations, there has been change. There has been moments, especially in New York, that I've seen that people have taken action because, again, um, pre-COVID and even through now, realizing that our community has to grow in some form of fashion. We can't just have another event. That actually has to be conversations had, and whether it's a Zoom or in person, but also to highlighting people like yourself, women like yourself that are now becoming no longer just the spectators or the social dancers and the consumers, but now the producers. Now you're creating your own events in a market that is competitive, because I don't know if people understand this, but we love dancing, but it also is a business. And
Yes.
you also understand is that there are people that are extremely inviting and understanding, as you've seen in the Zouk world. And I've seen that myself in New York. And I have to be honest, the
Yeah.
Zouk community as a whole has been so refreshing to me over these past years from other communities. It's hard to explain in a way. It's just it's an aura that feels different. But my question to you is, through your years, of course, training and learning and traveling, now stepping into the role now of a promoter, an organizer, how was those initial stages like?
I would have to say that it's been an uphill battle.
Mhm.
Once you start, you have an idea of, like, I want to throw a party, I want to have
Mm,
fun, I want to bring people together, right? And then there's this accounting and marketing and finding a venue. And the fact that for me, like I said, I hopped around, I did different student teams, I took privates from different people. I think I would have learned at a much more accelerated rate than I did if I had had the money up front to just, like, invest.
yeah.
But since I didn't do that way, I think I learned kind of slowly. But at the end of the day, and I've talked to, like, my current students about it. It's that I have supported every single other studio and
Yeah.
couple that have taught practically every dance in Houston. And time after time again, I'll literally send out personal messages to other organizers and other studios and say, "Hey, come to my events,
Yeah.
come to my stuff. I'll let you in for free because I want my students to have the opportunity. But I really just want you guys to bring that support. Bring not, I mean, business is great because we had to have money to kind of make more money to have more events, right? But I
Mhm.
put so much of my own money into having these parties, which turned into socials, which turned
Yep.
into, workshops and, like, bringing other people in. Like, I
Yeah.
want people to have access to that, but I spent so much time, energy of my own money into it. And for a long time, it's very discouraging to not get a lot of return
Yeah.
outside of students coming to me and saying, I met somebody that I've been dating for the last year at your social. I lost 20 pounds because I've been actively
Mhm.
going in salsa. Or I just love how detail oriented your teaching style is compared to someone else. Because for me, I can't grow the community unless I grow the individual. And so I feel like the difference between me and my competitors and I is, like, I'm not focused on the money because it wasn't my main job in the beginning.
Yes.
It wasn't my main focus. It was, I feel like there's a need and I want to meet that need and I want to bring a different perspective. But then over time, right before COVID, it became my sole income. I was putting everything into it and launching this
Mm.
business literally a month or two before COVID was hitting, which was just the worst time, honestly, to start your own business. But I don't want people just to like have a good time and like think that they learned something, right? Because
Yeah.
you can learn a bunch of things in a class, but that doesn't mean you're not going to retain it. That doesn't mean you're not going to get better. And so I feel like a lot of instructors and classes are kind of distributed in such small portions because they're trying to get the most money out of the person over time,
Hmm.
not really focused on the actual person learning and changing and growing. And so my mentality and the way that I build my curriculum is I want to kind of like diagnose the person. I want to see
Mm.
what their weaknesses are, what their strengths are, and build something off of that. And then even in my group classes, myself or one of my dance partners, my assistants, we like to kind of sit back and see if they're absorbing that information and tweak while we have that person there, right? And so for me, because I'm a very blunt person and I'm very outgoing, I think I was able to withstand a lot of rejection um,
Yeah.
from social dancing, from my competitors, and keep going. But I think sometimes if you have a different mentality or that's not
Yeah.
comfortable to you, you can get very discouraged. And then everybody gets that like, intermediate syndrome where they, you think like, oh, fuck, like I'm awesome, I'm good, I'm like, I got this. I don't want to dance with you basic curse over there. And
Hmm.
then you advance and you realize that you never stop learning. You never stop
Yes.
practicing your fundamentals, and that the best instructors, the master levels, instructors, in my opinion, are able to lead and to follow. They're able to accommodate and dance at the person that they're dancing with at their level and make that
Yeah.
person smile and feel comfortable and vibe. Versus, I saw other instructors like literally talking, and I had people tell me like, correct me social dancing and actually talk to me, when I first started out. And then they walk away and they feel discouraged. And
Mm.
that's the same thing with people that like have hygiene issues. Like one of
Yes.
my main things is that, when people come in, their clothes are reeking of cigarettes, and then all of a sudden they're sweating
Mm.
you, or people don't wear deodorant, or people have kind of
Yes.
food allergies and it comes out in their pores, right? People get made fun of, people get ousted, people are just continuously dealing with the problem because they don't want to like face the conflict. And so when I started out, I was addressing these problems in like a very direct way, and it used to rub people the wrong way because my delivery at the time was not really maybe as graceful or tactful or empathetic as I would like to think it is now, because you don't really have an understanding. You're not in that person's shoes. You just kind of
Yeah.
want to like fix the problem for everybody else, including yourself. So, and so I took some time off too, and kind of went back to my communication degree and realized that
Hmm.
um, sometimes, everybody learns differently and everybody receives things differently. And sometimes they're not even ready to receive that information.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to be honest, I understand the quote unquote the blunt nature of how you say it. Most people would say it's not how what you say, it's how you say it. That can be because we can agree on the same thing, but the way you deliver it to someone can totally turn them off and not even want to listen to what the context is.
Mhm.
But for me as well, coming from New York, where people know that we are blunt and honest.
Yes.
I would say also my experience in the dance world is very similar to in other cities that I've talked to different owners or just people in the community. And realizing this is that, you know, in reality, as years go by and time is constantly changing, the more and more now I'm seeing of organizers realizing if you work together,
Mhm.
then you have more collaboration, then people feel more invited. People have to understand too, organizers, promoters, dance directors have to understand that their consumer can choose what they want to do. when you give them an ultimatum of sticking with me and not working with others, don't get me wrong, it can work for some because some people feel totally comfortable. But when you allow them to feel and understand that you are paying for a service, you can choose to take it with me, or you can choose to, like you said in that word, distribute. Distribute your monetary your money to different services and learn from so many people. I think too, if I have to be completely honest, a lot of times just dance directors or owners are just selfish. That's it's completely the understanding. I've talked to them because when it boils down to is, in reality, I don't want somebody taking my students. But what I say to that is, if your teaching is that good, they're not going to leave you forever. They want to learn, let them learn. If you have a ceiling and you hit it, that's okay, but at least they learn something from you. But it's also how you teach them, and
Yes.
what they put out to the world is a reflection and representation of you. So a question I have for you now is, from your experience going from the basic dancer to now you're teaching,
Mhm.
owning and hosting events, what is that feeling like of now actually teaching someone is taking direction from you?
Well, the first time I was interested in kind of taking an instructor role was like in 2015, and actually my first congress that I ever taught at was Alaska Salsa Congress.
Oh, wow. Honestly, I would have loved to have been there. I
So
know
I
Alaska, of all
yes,
places.
it was a very long flight up there. I've never been to Alaska, and I was so thankful, and I was partnered with someone that I had never met. We were going to teach together. We were going to do a challenge together in Kisomba. And I remember getting there because they had local instructors, and usually when now, like if I bring someone in, I kind of like set it up for them to be able to teach private lessons, have that like
Yeah.
the availability to kind of like, make extra money while they're there. So for me, it was like, okay, I'm getting this flight taken care of, hotel taken care of. And I didn't know how to negotiate anything as an artist then either. I was just thrilled to have the opportunity to go somewhere and meet some people that
Yeah.
I've never met in dance. And I remember being there and missing my flight to leave.
Oh.
And I missed my flight because no one told me that you had to have like your bags on the plane, not like an hour, but like 2 hours ahead of time. It was like an unusual rule. And then the next flight out of there wasn't until the next day. And I remember the organizer there, they had that Congress for like 7, 8 years. And we're all having lunch. Everybody's gonna leave. That was, still in town. They still had some extra time. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to have to find an Airbnb. I'm going to have to figure something else
Yeah.
out. I remember them all sitting around drinking. And one of the students who took my class was like, hey, like, do you need a ride to your Airbnb? Because like, obviously you're missing a day of work and the Congress is over. And I was like, oh, thank you. It would be really appreciative because I've been doing all this. And I remember the organizer saying with her drink, like right in front of me, like, she can take care of it herself. Why don't you
Oh.
go drink with me and let's go hang out at the studio? And I was like, I was a little bit stunned
Oh,
because
absolutely.
I flew
Absolutely.
across the country. No one lined up private lessons for us. In fact, other students were learning from the local instructors that aren't even intermediate
Mm.
Zumba dancers. And those instructors aren't taking privates with us, right?
Yeah.
You always want to learn and like,
Absolutely.
and also I have to say that translating instruction is different from social dancing. You can be a great social dancer and a terrible instructor or vice versa.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm trying to learn how to teach. But I just had like this very negative like aura. And I was like, what am I, like, what am I even doing here? And she was a female organizer that had
Mm.
flown me there and had like complete disregard for, me. And then in the scheme of things, I got home, someone else was like was helpful or whatever. But I guess that's a big difference. What I'm trying to go back to is like
Mhm.
Texas hospitality.
Yes.
For us, we're known for, I think, I hope so, that we're generous, that we want to make things work, we want to collaborate. And yeah, so that was my first experience outside teaching. And I was like, wow, okay, that's not how we do things back home.
Yeah.
And then my second one, my first Congress that I went to, not teaching, but I went for fun. I went to Atlanta Bachata Festival.
Yeah.
I was there for almost a week, a couple of days before, because I like to see the cities that I go to, not just for the Congress if I can. And I remember dancing with a professional Kizomba instructor, and he literally just cupped my breast for like 2 songs in a row. And then after, he said, well, back in my country, this is how we dance Kizomba. And he was, married with kids, with whatever. And so, like, looking back now, I didn't realize like how many times I could have just gave up. And so when I started organizing, I wanted people to have the availability to dance, the safe space to dance, the ability to question if something is wrong or different, or, they want to evoke some kind of change. And so when I teach, sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes I communicate something and it's not correct, or, because this is learning for me too. I don't think we get to a point where we ever just stop learning. But in terms of collaborating, the way that I set up, so right now I have 2 socials a week, but I had to shut everything down again in December because COVID numbers are very, very high here. And my days were Mondays and Wednesdays. And the reason I picked those days is so that people Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday can attend other Kizomba related events. And so I was teaching Kizomba specifically at one point where nobody else was teaching Kizomba on Wednesdays. And then all of a sudden, one of my first instructors, a couple that hadn't been teaching for 2 or 3 years, comes back, and now they're teaching on Wednesdays. And then once a month, all the Angolans and Cape Verdes and the people that dance traditional Kizomba, they decide to do their once a month social. Guess what day?
Wednesday.
And so it's not that I consider my classes or my teaching the best or the priority, but it's like, this is such a small community. Why not? It's not even about splitting the money, but why don't you give your students the ability to practice and to be able to take whatever you're learning or you're teaching and be able to apply it? And now we can't do that because we're splitting everyone. And now Houston is like one of the largest cities in the country, right? So you got to have a car here. You're not going to be using a bus to like get around in taxis so much unless you're like in downtown. But for the most part, there's millions of people. There's plenty of money and stuff to go around. And so it was just frustrating to me again, because I was like, I had reached out to all of those people, and even the new people that have recently moved to Houston that are teaching Kizomba before they ever started teaching anything, and said, hey, come teach in my event. And I pay my people. I might not pay them a lot because it comes down to, how many people are attending and the venue and this and that. But I made sure that anybody who works on my team, I'm not trading them to come take private lessons at my house unless that's what they want. But like, the females in our industry, that I was acknowledging them, training them, paying everyone on my team, from like the door girl to the instructors to whatever. And so for the most part, I'm not making anything off of it. I'm not making money. And if I do, that's great, because I can reinvest that in the business. I can invest in bringing in new talent. I can invest, like recently I did my first ever little performance team. And in 2 weeks, I had 5 or 6 couples learn, 2-3 minutes of bachata choreo and perform at a quinceañera. And it was so much fun. And I love seeing that like star in people's eyes when they first start dancing and they're just like so excited and learning. But like 70-80% of them had never performed before. And so for me, I've found like connections with professional partners all over the country, but I don't have a main stable partner in Houston. Like for bachata, for Kizomba, whatever. I have assistants. I have people that I've partnered with like my current partner, his name is Dionisio. He actually taught me bachata back in 2015,
Yeah.
and I brought him out of retirement to come teach. But it's very hard to find someone with the talent and the passion and the capability to really commit to becoming at a professional level. Like the couples that you see traveling to congresses all the time, they're usually romantically involved because they spend so much time together. And
Yeah.
that's usually the main thing that they're doing 100%. So for me, it's like if I want to grow and I want to expand, I have to have a team, and I have to have a team that I can trust and rely
Yeah.
on. And the thing is that people all have their own problems, their own lives. They're, outside of this. And that doesn't mean that, that they don't have the drive or the passion or dedication, but they may not look at things on that type of commitment. So
Yeah.
finding people that have that level of commitment and talent here in Houston, and then that want, has been difficult. So sometimes I feel like I'm like, I have to MC, I'm DJing, I'm promoting, I'm
Yeah.
teaching, I'm, networking, I'm negotiating. So all of these things, thankfully, these traits and attributes and things that I know how to do, I've either learned along the way or I've learned them from working in other industries. But it's still difficult to tackle. I cannot be in 50 places at the same time.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
no, I definitely understand that, and realizing too is that it's really all about growth and how you handle adversity. Because, like you said, many other people who have probably been in this situation or might ever be in this situation will just falter and move on and just let everyone else do what they need to do. But to see your resilience and see that even through the personal adversities with the competitors, even through COVID, you still saying, hey, this isn't about money, this is passion.
Yeah.
And I believe that because I don't know if most people don't understand is that unless you have a successful event for about 3 to 5 years, your window between 1 and 3 years is really going to dictate most of the time how successful you will be with having events. Because like you said, it's not just as easy of I just pay one person. There's so many people that are working within this event to help your event, so giving that us that information is really vital. But at least as now, we're kind of coming in really into the present. My last question before we get into our last segment called the randoms is, going into 2022 and towards the future, how do you see the future of SaviKiz and the Kizomba community in Houston?
I think in order to make our community grow, we have to keep absorbing knowledge and learning from other people, especially in Europe. So for me,
Yeah.
I haven't ventured to Europe, Portugal, Luxembourg, some of like the Kizomba hubs on an international level, France, Paris specifically. So for me, I would eventually like to do that so that I can kind of bring that back here. But also, I just want to create a number of events that's consistent,
Yeah.
and that for me, like, I think each studio has like a niche group that they cater to, right? Some
Yeah.
people really like to inspire beginners. Some people are training competitors and professionals. For me, I really like to kind of cater to intermediate dancers, people that have a foundation that have started different places and that really kind of want to take their sense of self and kind of,
Mhm.
instead of dancing generically, being able to apply it to the music and to that specific partner and kind of break through with their own sense of like how they want to dance outside of everything else that they've learned from other people. So kind of finding themselves. So that's what I enjoy doing. But for me, now that COVID is like, it's just been an evolving factor. I've still wanted to have events, and I've still been out there and very exposed for the last, like year and a half, 2 years. I was still dancing, doing and other things. And this is actually the first time I have had COVID. My boyfriend have had COVID.
Yeah.
We're actually in the process of moving into our first home together.
Mhm.
The holiday season, my goal was just like the new year, I want to have 3 events per week consistently
Yeah.
where people are getting access to sensual bachata specifically, because in Texas, Dallas is like the hub for that.
Yeah.
Houston, people really focus on salsa or the basics of bachata. So bachata fusion, sensual bachata, and the sensual dances like kizomba, they're kind of underrepresented. And so that's why
Hmm.
I wanted BKZ to kind of exist and to
Yeah.
prosper and grow, because there isn't a lot of people pushing for that. And I feel like, especially with kizomba, that if people aren't out there trying to help people find that connection and falling in love with this dance, it's gonna die. It's gonna die off in a way.
Yeah.
Just the numbers, just the basic numbers. So I want to be able to keep that dance alive and people to have access to it. And then I also want to have a place where the music they've never heard before, where I'm pulling artists and DJs from all over the world, bachata music in Italian,
Yeah.
French, Chinese, Hindi, instead of, there's nothing wrong with Prince Royce and Aventuro and, Grupo Extra and all that, but there's music outside of that. And so for me, a really important part of me as a sort of as a DJ, I became a DJ for my events. And that's been a whole new ball game to tackle versus just putting Pandora on shuffle.
Yeah.
Is having music that people have never heard of. So education is just really important. I think
Mhm.
a lot of other people don't know the roots of these dances either. They don't know the history. They don't know how things have evolved or the pioneers. And so I try to take pieces of that from the culture, the history, the roots, the acknowledgement of that. I try to take the newness,
Mhm.
uniqueness, whatever is recent and fun and international, and bring it to my events, and just a level of consistency. I just
Mhm.
want to be able that whenever someone's visiting in Houston, they can go online and be like, okay, this is X, Y, and Z places to dance. And so when people walk away and they go back to their city, they can say, wow, I had these amazing connections, amazing dance, and there was a song there that I've
Yeah.
never heard before.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my signature, and how I want to kind of contribute to our dance community.
Absolutely. I love it, and just the genuineness and your approach to things. And I really respect that. And now it helps us towards our end of our conversation as we get into my favorite section called the randoms, which is some random questions that I have, just different ones that might deal with dance, food, and life.
All right.
So, my first question to you is, if you could have one last meal right now, what would it be?
We have a restaurant here in Houston. It's a steakhouse, and it's called Doris Metropolitan. And they have an incredible ribeye with sauteed mushrooms. And so I think steak and a wedge and a glass of wine would probably be it.
Okay, okay. I like it. I like it. All right. Next question is, if a friend of yours is visiting Houston and they say, hey, I'm getting off the plane, take me to a spot to eat. Besides that one, where are you taking them to?
Oh, that's tough. That's tough. Good place. Probably any of our Mexican restaurants. We have a lot of great Tex-Mex here.
Yeah.
Everything from El Tiempo, Papacitos. And we have a couple that have like outside cabanas. So it has like that islandy or South American vibe. So something that's kind of a little bit outside of the norm of like Taco Bell.
Okay. All right. I mean, anything outside of Taco Bell, I'm definitely going for.
And
All
we
right.
also have, I don't know how many other cities, but we have the Hyatt Regency Spindletop. And so you go up there, you're sitting having drinks or dessert, and it kind of slowly rotates. So you're getting a 360 view of downtown Houston.
Okay. That sounds awesome. All right. Next question is, besides Houston, what is another favorite dancing city of yours?
I love South Florida. So
Mhm.
Miami is like my second home. I go there a lot. But honestly, Chicago was very impressive to me. I'm not a mambo dancer originally. It was very mambo heavy, but the level in Chicago and the level of openness, it was very refreshing after kind of COVID. To honestly, I want to say that their level is higher than Houston, and
Mhm.
sometimes it's good. It's fun to just go and every single one of your dances just be dynamite. So Chicago was very impressive, and also I went in April during my birthday month, but that wasn't when Chicago was like freezing cold.
Yeah.
So I got very fortunate. I kind of like I had been trying to go to Chicago for 3 years because
Yeah.
we kind of consider them a little bit like our sister city
Hmm.
in a way, the North and the South. And so they've been, my Chicago friends have been like, hey, why don't you
Yeah.
come up here? So for years, yes, I think Chicago is one of my new favorites.
That's interesting that you say Chicago because I seen a recent clip of you dancing socially. And let's get into that. What's after this? We'll get into more of these questions called the random. Wow. Okay. Okay. I seen you there with the smiles and the hand movements and everything. But overall, seeing the joy that you have, even while you're watching this video backstage, and just seeing you smiling, that right there is a great sign of how much dance and a great example of how much dance means to you, how much joy it brings. But, we got to keep this moving. So, my next question to you, we're going to go back to a subject we talked about when it
Mhm.
comes to social dancing. And
Yes.
as you talked about your big pet peeves, as we talked about hygiene, as etc. So, for me, my question to you, what is the biggest don't when somebody's about to ask you to dance? What's the one thing you need them to know to not do?
So this is a controversy that I've actually kind of discussed with my own students, but I've have people who have been dancing or social dancing on and off. They always come up to me and they're like, I kind of suck. I'm not a really good dancer, but will you dance with me?
Hmm.
And then they've been doing it for 3 years. So they never put in any effort to improving. But they're going to tell you that they suck anyways. So when somebody does that, automatically you're just going to have this negative stigma, even if the dance is going to be good or not, that it's not
Yeah.
going to be good. So I tell my students, just act with confidence, fake it till you make it. And social dancing is not the place for talking. So you shouldn't be having conversations and discussing things while you're dancing. I mean, we do and
Yeah.
we have fun, but I've had people come up and say, "Oh, well, how did I do? Can you tell me?" And I'm like, "Hey, I'm off the clock." It's different if someone pulls you to the side after and says, "Hey, I just want a little bit of feedback." But I just think that why would you go into it and make someone have a pity dance for you and kind of like be talking about the elephant in the room and then
Yeah.
never kind of worked changing that. So either you don't say anything at all and you just ask me to dance, right? And I'm going to smile and, hopefully
Hmm.
it goes well, or you actively work on it.
Got you.
I think that would be my main one. Yeah.
Okay, I like that. I like it. All right, next question is for Savi. Answer me this: if Savi is not dancing, she is doing blank.
Right now studying, but
Hey.
right now studying and moving. But I'm big into traveling, so I love to travel for work and for pleasure. And
Okay.
I'm a low key a little bit of a nerd. So I think when people are like, "Oh, you're a dance instructor," it's like, "Oh yeah," that like I think that they don't associate intellect, I guess, with
Hmm.
being a professional dancer because I always have to be like, "No, I'm not a stripper. Thank you."
Yeah.
Um, I like to introduce, and I told my boyfriend, yeah, like introduce me as a dance professional because when you say someone's like, "Oh, I'm a
Dancer, they just
dancer," they're
automatically.
just like, "Oh, well, you're curvy." Like, "Oh, okay,"
Yep.
and I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa,
No.
slow down there." And so it's interesting, especially with COVID, everybody wants to learn how to dance,
Yeah.
especially in the Latino community. They're like, "Oh, teach me, I should know," because I've been going to quinces and this and that, and I don't know how to learn. But it's just actually doing it, just actually putting in the time. So when I
Gotcha.
have free time, I wish I could be dancing more right now. Actually,
Gotcha. All right. All right.
yeah,
Next question is throw a softball one, a quick one. Favorite color.
blue.
Oh, all right. Number 7. I'm gonna put you in the hot seat right now. I'm gonna give you 3 categories. I need you to rank them from you love it, love it, love it, and you can probably do without it at a congress. You
Yeah.
got bachata, kizomba, salsa. What's your top and what's your bottom? Give me that list.
I want to say honestly, it's very dependent on the scene. Like in different
Mm,
cities, I'm gonna go do different things. So when I was in Chicago specifically, I was dancing a lot of salsa. Even though it was a
mm,
bachata congress, I was dancing a lot of salsa and mambo. In general, my heart would say kizomba, bachata, salsa.
mm.
But I think it's very mood dependent and scene dependent. Scene dependent. I want to
Yes.
go where the level of the dance is highest. So if I go to Dallas, I want to be dancing sensual bachata.
Yeah.
New York is another one of those kind of scenes that they have a good variety, a good level of all the different dances. But everybody says, you go up there to dance on two. Mambo. So I think if I could pick and choose, if the level is the same at all, yeah, Kizomba, it kind of is like my first love.
Okay.
It takes the win usually.
Okay. I like that. I like that. All right. Number 8. If you were not living in Houston right now, tell me the another city you would be living in.
Oh, hands down, either Miami or San Diego.
Okay. I like that. I've been to San Diego. I haven't been to Miami yet, but I've seen videos and photos galore. So I can only imagine. So I definitely can see why. But also I like how you kind of you got the West Coast and the Southern ness in there. All right,
They're both beautiful cities. Both beautiful cities. They do have their talent. Miami is a fun place, but instead of like being like Vegas or like
Mhm.
certain touristy cities, there's still the suburbs, and there's still like a sense of like home and family outside of
Yeah.
just partying. And they have a very similar vibe. The organizers and the people that I've worked with in Miami have been very welcoming and friendly, and like
Mm.
uh, and so I just feel like it'd be very easy for me to adapt to either of those cities.
Okay. I like that. I like that. All right. Next question for you. If you were at your favorite event right now, say for instance, if it's a Congress,
Mhm.
and the organizer said, Savannah, we got our last show Saturday night. You get to choose the last show. Who is it?
That is so difficult. That's so difficult. I would say, usually they close the show with the professionals, but I would like try to throw in something that people have never seen before. So if it's kids or if it's some type of like magical act in there with dancing, it's probably something just memorable, like a
Yeah.
shock factor to it.
Okay.
because everybody is kind of knows the schedule of a congress and performances. You know, there's these student teams, there's these
Hmm.
professionals. So what I want to put in there at the end is a wow factor, maybe something you've never seen before. For
Okay.
me, if I could just throw it out there, and since you know them personally, maybe close the show out with a lap dance. You know,
I mean, is this Alejandro Ray?
Alejandro Ray, I would say I'm a huge fan of Mr. Ray. I know he's been teaching that class for over 10 years, and I don't know how family friendly that'd be on a Saturday night, but if that wasn't really a component, yeah, I would give something that maybe people just didn't have access to see on a regular basis.
Yes, I definitely agree, and I like that because I can see from your experience in traveling, you've been to many events, and for many people, we love the shows. Don't get me wrong, but most people love the social dancing afterwards. But
Mhm.
having that opportunity to just watch countless shows, you have things that excite you and things that are okay. So that's totally understandable. And now brings us to our last question. This one is going to be fun. So, if you had your own store right now, what would the name of that store be?
So we played a little game last night on if you were going to name a lingerie line, and so we were going to call it Insatiable
Mm,
by JNS. And so my personal taste is I like the glitter, I like the flashy, but I like things of quality. So
yeah.
whatever I sell, I want to have a uniqueness, something that you can't live without, that is actually, you know, multi-purposeful, and something that sets you apart from everybody else. So
Okay. All right. I like that. I like that. And I want to thank you so much for doing this segment. I usually do it at the end with all my guests to kind of add some levity, but now it helps us transition now to the closing of our talk tonight. And as we've talked as well, but everybody usually knows for me, I'm having your first time being here. I feel like this is more of a part one to hopefully more parts. Myself, I'll be traveling to Texas next year.
excited.
More information. So I would love even to do this in a public format, which I've been doing, of catching up with artists like yourselves and just giving people really the inside scoop of what you guys are really bringing to the table. But I've really appreciated your time and kind of getting glimpses of your life and what you've been able to experience. We understand there's so much more to talk about, and that's why I would love to have you on again. But before we do go, I would love to know if you had any last few words for myself and the audience, but also contact info on how people can reach you.
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me. It's been absolutely delightful. You can check out my business pages under SaviKiz on Facebook and Instagram. And then Go Latin Dance and Eventbrite typically have the details for the events that I do. At one point, it was 2 weekly socials and then a once a month either pool party or special type of weekender. We've been doing
Hmm.
the Meet Zook, working with the zoo community. And then I have my personal information for the people that want to do collabs and book private lessons and those types of things.
Awesome. And honestly, here at the podcast, we definitely fully support all your efforts and we really look forward to seeing what you have coming up next. And any info, any visuals that you have upcoming, we'll be definitely sharing. But I thank you for your time. I thank everyone that has listened, that will be listening. This episode will be on Spotify coming soon. And I thank everyone for your time tonight. I thank you, Savannah, for your
So good
time.
to see you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night. And again, stay safe out there. And I'll see you soon.